Hey guys, how is everyone doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and this video is going up on Christmas morning. So, if you are somebody out there who celebrates the holiday of Christmas, then to you I say Merry Christmas. I myself happen to be Jewish, and Hanukkah is of course currently happening, so I will also say Happy Hanukkah to anyone else out there. And whatever other holiday you may or may not be celebrating, I just hope you're having a really awesome day as we slide into some video game conversation. So lately, as I've had time to do so, I've really enjoyed kind of having just random video game topic conversations on holidays. My head is always full of a bunch of random topics and ideas based on all sorts of things going on in the video game industry, and usually with Nintendo specifically, but definitely within the industry at large. And that's also what I want to do today, being that it is Christmas Day, and I know most people are probably hopefully not having to work. I will be working on Christmas a little bit from home, but I do have a very interesting kind of concept in my head that I've been thinking about for quite a few months, and today felt like the day to talk about it. I want to go into the very idea of if Nintendo might have a very surprising plan for the Switch long term, which would be for the Switch to potentially become the new version of the 3DS. Now, I'm sure that right off the bat, that sounds crazy to you, and you're like, Rob, what the hell are you talking about? There is nothing about the 3DS that is similar to the Switch and vice versa. That's an insane concept. And I totally get why that might be your first reaction to that statement. But it's not so much that I'm trying to say the Switch is the 3DS or will become some different kind of machine than it is now, and suddenly it's a two-screened, touchscreen, handheld-only kind of device. I'm not talking about that. I think I'm talking about more conceptually within Nintendo, and from like a business perspective and an overall business model for the company. What I'm wondering is, actually, let me go back a little bit. Let me first touch on the very idea of how long we expect the Switch to be Nintendo's kind of main current hardware on the market, because that is a conversation that people sometimes have, and a lot of people sometimes wonder about that. And it's also something I've brought up several times, and if you've been following me for at least this past year, you've probably heard my kind of general thoughts and theories on what Nintendo's plan for the Switch is. I feel like the Switch has about maybe 2 or 3 more years, maybe 2 to 4 more years as far as being Nintendo's kind of main focus. Like I in general, I feel like Nintendo will be releasing their new successor to the Nintendo Switch, whether it's a Switch 2 or just a home console or whatever it is, their actual successor machine. I think that that's going to be releasing really within 2 or 3 years, guys. I feel like 2022 might be the year that we actually see a new machine from Nintendo. And a huge part of that reason is, yes, because machines are coming out from Sony and Microsoft. We know that their next-gen consoles are coming soon. And it's, I don't want to go too much into why I think that Nintendo is paying attention to that to a degree. Maybe not completely, but to a degree. And so, yes, that might have some influence on Nintendo deciding to release a new machine within 2 years after those consoles. I don't think they have to try to beat them to the punch, and I'm not saying they need to try to get it out 6 months after the PS5 or whatever. But I do think within 2 or so years after the next Xbox and PlayStation 5, I do think Nintendo wants their new machine. And so while my kind of random theory and idea here might be totally wrong, and maybe the Switch is going to last for another 5 or 10 years, if we just kind of run with my idea for the sake of the conversation in this video, and let's pretend that by 2022 or even 2023 at the latest, Nintendo will have their official next-gen successor machine out on the market, we then ask ourselves, what will that be? And I think that, that is also another big discussion, but I sometimes wonder if Nintendo might be thinking about releasing another machine that is only a home console and not immediately jumping into a hybrid successor, okay? So maybe the next machine after the Switch is just another home console, the way the GameCube was, the way the Wii was, the way the NES was, the way the 64 was, the way the Wii U is. I mean, all these different things. What if they just want to go back to something a little bit more normal and traditional, which I will tell you guys would not disappoint me, even though I love the Switch and I love the wacky hybrid nature of it and I take advantage of it. I would not be crying if Nintendo went back to just making another regular machine, okay? And what if their plan is to keep the Switch going through that? And so basically my theory about Nintendo replacing the Switch in just 2 or 3 years from now becomes both true and not true from a different perspective once their next machine comes out. Could Nintendo be planning another regular home console in a couple of years to be more of direct competition to the Xbox and the PlayStation 5, whereas they also would plan to keep the Nintendo Switch going for several years into the life of that machine so that they both coexist at the same time, Nintendo's next-gen home console and the Nintendo Switch, and in that relationship, in that business model, the Switch kind of would effectively become the same idea as what the DS and the 3DS has been for the last decade, so that really, they kind of do still end up having a traditional home console and a handheld on the market, you know? And you might think that just because Nintendo released the Nintendo Switch Lite recently, that's why I'm so focused on this idea, because, well, Nintendo's obviously been pushing the Switch to be handheld only because they released a handheld only version of the machine. And honestly, it's not because of the Nintendo Switch Lite, even though that does sort of help my theory feel like it could turn out to be true. That's not the reason that I had this idea. I think it's that I've really been struggling in my head to reconcile the fact that I think the Nintendo Switch can't be Nintendo's only main hardware on the market for more than another 2 or 3 years. And yes, I've been thinking they need to move on to their next machine sooner than later, but at the same time, still understanding why Nintendo would want to keep the Nintendo Switch going. There is so much momentum to it. It's such a great and successful machine, especially in terms of being a portable gaming device. It's so good at that, and people love it, and they can get great games to run on this thing. And there is reason to believe, despite my theory here, there is reason to believe that Nintendo might want to keep the Switch going for 5 or 6, 7 more years. It's entirely possible. And if the market's there to support it, then I realized maybe Nintendo is actually planning on doing both things. Maybe they are going to release a next-gen machine in 2 or 3 years, but they're also just going to keep the Nintendo Switch going. And if their next-gen machine comes out in 2022 or 2023, I mean, the Nintendo Switch very likely could be as cheap as even like $150 by then, you guys. Imagine if the Nintendo Switch is $149 by the time we hit 2022. And by the end of 2022, a home console from Nintendo comes out that's really pushing all these next-gen concepts and visuals and power and whatever other wacky, innovative idea Nintendo throws on top of it. And you've got, a $300 or $400 next-gen Nintendo console and a $150 Nintendo Switch on the market. Those two devices in a successful Nintendo business model can coexist very successfully. Obviously, the Nintendo Wii and the DS are great examples of that, where Nintendo was able to maintain 2 insanely successful pieces of hardware, one handheld, one home console at the same time, and they did very well, and people loved these devices, and they sold like crazy, and they broke records, and they're literally 2 of the best-selling video game devices of all time, and they existed throughout most of their life at the same time. And even going into the Wii U years, where the Wii U didn't really do very well as a home console, they still had that 3DS in the background kicking ass and arguably keeping Nintendo afloat. I mean, I don't think that it's the only thing that was being successful for them. They sold crazy amounts of software on the Wii U, even though the console didn't sell very well. But at the end of the day, still, yes, it really was the 3DS that was their main focus, and that was their main revenue generator, and really kept them alive during those years. And so keeping some sort of successful and interesting handheld device on the market, even when you have a different sort of console gaming device out there, seems to be what works for Nintendo. I mean, they're the only company that can be, not just unbelievably unstoppable in the handheld space, and the Switch is just really the next evolution of that idea, and that's part of the reason it's so successful. And I think that Nintendo, now that they've found success with this hybrid idea, is probably never going to let the handheld market go. I mean, I don't know if anyone was thinking that they ever would anyway, probably not, but I just wanted to share that. I don't think that they will. I certainly don't. I mean, the Switch is that great. The DS and the 3DS are that great. Obviously, the Game Boy line, I mean, holy crap. Like, I think the second most successful selling family of consoles ever is the Game Boy family. And so, I just had this epiphany a couple of months ago. Like, I think this is what Nintendo's going to do. They're going to release a next-gen console that probably won't be a hybrid. And I think that'll be really great and exciting, and provided that they don't eliminate the Switch right away, and if the Switch has a reason to still keep getting good, relevant games and coexist with this other device, then people have their portable Nintendo gaming the way that they want. And I mean, when you think of the quality of games that the Switch can play, even in 5 years, I think it'll still be playing games of reasonable quality in a handheld fashion that can complement whatever their home console might be at that time. And it could be just another amazing, successful, era for Nintendo, building off of the Switch, maybe repeating the success that they saw in the late 2000s and early 2010s with the Wii and the 3DS. I really think that it could happen. Of course, I'm not crazy and delirious here. I don't think that I'm Nostradamus, and I am not like the ultimate king of all predictions. I've never been the king of predictions. I've never claimed to be, okay? I'm not out here trying to sell myself as the guy who gets all these predictions right, and so you should just listen to what I say and write news articles and make tweets about my predictions. I'm not leaking stuff. I'm not talking rumors. It's literally just, I'm just a guy who thinks that this might happen, and I think it could be cool, and I think it makes sense. But all of this could be wrong. Maybe the Switch is going to last for another decade, and Nintendo's not going to release anything else, and it's just the Switch for another 10 years. Okay, maybe that happens. Maybe their next machine isn't going to be a home console, and it's just going to be another hybrid. Maybe that's their plan, is to make a Nintendo Switch 2 that's the exact same hybrid idea, only better in all way, shape, and form. Sure, maybe they do that, or maybe they do something even totally different that I'm not even thinking about and none of us could predict. Also totally possible. But I do feel good enough about the possibility of my idea that I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to put it out there and kind of put the idea into your guys' heads to just kind of let it start bouncing around in your brains and just thinking about it and see what kind of conversations crop up over it. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to think that Nintendo would eventually return to just making a regular home console again at some point. Maybe now will be the time, maybe 20 years from now will be the time, who knows? And I think that they probably would be crazy to let the Switch die immediately in 2022 or 23 just because they put out a new home console. Like, why would they, if they went the home console route, why would they want to not still have something awesome out there on the market that does play portable games? And I think that they would be like, hey, let's take what was our home console focused on Nintendo Switch and let it kind of turn itself within the business model, turn itself into our handheld market. Let's make it our 3DS kind of equivalent while we put out this new crazy Nintendo Switch home console device in 2022. I mean, I don't know. It just all makes sense to me. It could be interesting, and so that's just what I think. But of course, I do want to hear what you guys think. Does my theory make sense to you? Do you like the idea of this? Do you hate the idea of this? Do you think it's completely impossible? Or do you think that maybe now that you've heard me talk about it and I've put the idea out there, that maybe it does make sense to you a little bit? I definitely want to hear how you guys react to this and what makes sense to you. And one more time, I know that it's Christmas Day, so I will say again, Merry Christmas to anyone who celebrates, and Happy Hanukkah to my fellow Jewish brethren out there. Hopefully you are having an excellent holiday time, and whatever else you might be celebrating or not celebrating, I just hope it's an awesome day and an awesome week and an awesome end to the year. Holy crap. And yeah, with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob Overlooked Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.